Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Washington Brief for October 4, 2022. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Jenkins, President of the Washington Times Foundation, which sponsors this webcast. He is also chairman of the Washington Times Holdings, the LLC, that owns the Times News organization. He has led a number of well-received fact-finding trips to Korea and Japan that have met with the legislative, executive, intel, and military leadership of those countries. As president of the nonprofit NGO, the Universal Peace Federation International, Dr. Jenkins has decades-long experience conducting peace initiatives all over the world, particularly in the Indo-Pacific and the Middle East. Dr. Jenkins, welcome.
Thank you, Larry. Welcome to our audience joining the Washington Brief today. We have a very special program. We have a delegation and panelists here that were on the fact-finding trip sponsored by the UPF and the Washington Times. Ambassador Detrani was our chairman of that delegation, and we were able to meet key leaders in the ROK and discuss the current situation in Northeast Asia. It was very, very helpful. The panelists here today are really experts on the current situation, as well as having years of experience directly with the U.S. ROK relationship and the 6 parties that have been involved directly with the threats from the nuclearization or nuclear weapons development of North Korea. We also will touch upon today the recent launch of 2 missiles that occurred. So I'd like to introduce our panelists and moderator. Ambassador Joseph Detrani is a commentator on security issues, former special envoy for negotiations with North Korea, and former director of the National Counterproliferation Center. Ambassador Detrani is also the former associate Director of National Intelligence and Special Advisor to the Director of National Intelligence. Prior to that, he was a senior official at the CIA. Currently, he's a professor at the Graduate Department of Defense and Strategic Studies at Missouri State University and an advisor at Sandia National Laboratories, a fellow at the Institute of the Korean American Studies, and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Dr. Alexander Manzaroff is an adjunct professor for security studies at the Edmund A. Walsh School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. He's also an adjunct professor of Korean studies at the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University and the Elliott School of International Affairs at George Washington U. He's also president and CEO of Great Falls Solutions, a consulting firm. Also, he founded as founding member of the U.S. National Committee on North Korea, and he's interviewed extensively on all the different networks and also has been a great contributor for the Washington Times. He's one of the few people in the United States who holds advanced degrees from Moscow State University of International Relations, Kim Il-sung University in Pyongyang, North Korea, as well as Columbia University in New York. And finally, who is our main guest speaker for today, is General Walter Skip Sharp. General Sharp epitomizes the Army family. He was born while his father was fighting the Korean War, and he graduated from West Point in 1974. General Sharp commanded the United Nations Command, Republic of Korea, United States Combined Forces Command, and the United States Forces Korea from 2008 to 2011. He also commanded troops in Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, uphold democracy in Haiti, and the multinational division of the NATO-led stabilization force in Bosnia. General Sharp is chairman of the board of the directors of the Military Officers Association of America and director of the board of the Korean Society, director on the board of the Korean Society, former chairman and president, and now special advisor to the Korean Defense Veterans Association. He consults for and is on several boards of U.S. companies and is involved in Northeast Asia and Korea strategy and policy discussions in Washington and with many think tanks. General Sharp is a valuable member of the fact finder that recently occurred in our trip to Seoul, and also all the meetings we have with ministers of government there back in August. He is also one that really helped open up our understanding of the cooperation between the ROK and the United States in terms of military command. It's a fascinating and unique situation that's unique to that relationship. So I'd like to introduce our moderator at this time. Welcome, Ambassador Joseph Tetrani. We're very excited about the program today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. It's an honor being here with you and our colleagues. And as you mentioned, we all visited recently in August, visited the Republic of Korea and had some excellent discussions there. So we will be getting into that today. And we're so fortunate having General Sharp with us as the principal speaker today. And of course, Dr. Mansaroff and I will have some questions for the general. But let me just open it up by saying the last few weeks have been very interesting. And indeed, we live in interesting times. We just saw yesterday, a few days ago, the visit of Vice President Harris to the Republic of Korea and to the DMZ. And prior to her visit to the DMZ and the Republic of Korea, North Korea launched 3 short-range ballistic missiles. And subsequent to her visit, they launched another 2 short-range ballistic missiles. This is not too surprising, but it is concerning, given that these are all in violation of UN Security Council resolutions. We just saw also recently a joint military naval, if you will, joint naval exercise with the Republic of Korea and the United States in Busan with the introduction of the U.S. aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan, a very significant naval exercise. The war in Ukraine continues. Most recently, the annexation of 4 regions in the south and in the east of Ukraine. And President Putin making it very clear that he will use all available means to ensure that the referendums hold and these areas are annexed to the Russian Federation. The Inflation Reduction Act was discussed by President Yoon in his visit to Tokyo for the funeral of the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and his discussion with President Biden on the Inflation Reduction Act and its impact on the vehicle industry in South Korea. Taiwan continues to be an issue. And then we're looking at the visit of Yoon Suk Yeol to the United States next year for the 70th anniversary of bilateral relations. So there's so much to discuss, and we're so fortunate to have General Sharp leading off this discussion. And General, over to you.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thanks to the Washington Times Foundation for this opportunity. The trip to Korea was fantastic. I always enjoy being able to get back to Korea and meet with not only friends, but the leadership that's over there that is responsible to a large degree for this strong alliance, this alliance between the Republic of Korea and the United States, which from a military alliance perspective, I truly do believe is the strongest alliance that the United States has anywhere in the world. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. What I wanted to focus on today was what makes that alliance strong today. And there's several elements of that, but then also what we need to be able to continue to do and even improve upon in other areas for this alliance to remain strong well into the future. In considering that, I think we also have to remember that there has been and continues to be a lot of talk about North Korea's nuclear capability and their ballistic missile capability. But we really cannot forget that North Korea has a huge conventional military that is located, deployed, ready to fight just north of the demilitarized zone. They have over 6,000 medium and long-range artillery systems. 4,000 of those can hit Korea, can hit Seoul without even moving. And they are very dangerous from that perspective. North Korea also has the largest special operating forces in the world, and they have a cyber capability that they have demonstrated and really continue to use on a daily basis. Also, they have worked very hard at some very advanced weaponry in the recent years, from hypersonics to having missiles that can fire from many different types of platforms, to include submarines. They are now talking about having tactical nuclear weapons deployed close to the border that will be used or could be used in the case of crisis, and not just in response to some sort of regime threatening attack into North Korea. They're threatening to use them. So what, again, I would like to, with that as a kind of a context of where North Korea is today and where they're moving, I'd like to talk about 4 elements that make the military alliance strong today, and then talk about 4 elements that I think will continue to be needed to be worked on to make that alliance even stronger in the future. So first off, for the elements that make the alliance strong today, I've got to start with the Republic of Korea military. The Republic of Korea has an outstanding military. They are modern and they are very well equipped. The Republic of Korea defense budget is larger percentage-wise of their GDP than any of our NATO allies. They have consistently funded their defense across many different administrations in Korea, and what they are buying now and will be in the future is exactly what they need to deter North Korea. The South Korean military is also very experienced. They have had deployments all around the world. They were with us in Vietnam. In Iraq, they had the 3rd largest number of forces of any country that send troops to Iraq, and they were with us in Afghanistan. They've also participated and are participating today in many United Nations peacekeeping missions around the world. They are very experienced and a first-rate military with experienced leadership. The second element that makes Combined Forces Command in this alliance strong today is the actual command itself, Combined Forces Command. The Republic of Korea and the U.S. Combined Forces Command is unique. There is no other command like it anywhere in the world because it is truly combined. U.S. soldiers work side by side with the Republic of Korea soldiers in one command from the very top to the very bottom. My deputy, when I was commander there, was a Korean 4-star commander. He sat in the office directly across from me. And that structure, Republic of Korea and U.S. sitting side by side, goes all the way through the command structure. It exists at all levels and it is real. It's not 2 units supporting each other. We have one plan, not a U.S. plan and a ROK plan. We have one plan to defend South Korea. Also, we do exercises together, we train together, we plan together, and we work together. The third element is United Nations Command. United Nations Command is the command that has remained in Korea since the Korean War. Today, there are 18 nations from around the world that have officers in Korea serving in the United Nations Command. The United Nations Command purpose today is to oversee the armistice agreement and to be able to train to be ready when conflict starts. In time of conflict, this enables nations and others to able to quickly integrate into the command and be prepared to defend the Republic of Korea. It also shows a strong commitment of 18 nations to peace in Northeast Asia, and I believe deters North Korea from attacking. I'm absolutely convinced if conflict starts in Northeast Asia and in Korea, a great many nations would come to the support of South Korea. And fourth is exercises. I'm very happy to see that exercises in the Republic of Korea have started up again, both live fire exercises and command outpost exercises, which are absolutely critical. You know, when you look at the forces in Korea, the U.S. forces come in and out. Some folks are there for 1 year, others up to 3 years. The units that the U.S. rotates in and out of Korea are there for 9 months. Also on the Republic of Korea side, the majority of the Republic of Korea forces that are in compulsory service serve for less than 2 years. So therefore, continuous training is necessary to make sure that Combined Forces Command and all the forces in Korea are truly ready. It must be realistic training and exercises. And I also believe these exercises deters North Korea because North Korea does see the capabilities that we have demonstrated during the exercises and understands the alliance is ready to quickly respond to any sort of provocation. So with those four elements that are in place today and are continuing to strengthen, I do think that there are four areas that we are working on but need more improvement in the future. The first is in the area of nuclear deterrence in response. North Korea continues to develop their nuclear weapons and a means to use them. They have talked about, and I believe they are, deploying tactical nuclear weapons near the border, and they have threatened to use these tactical nuclear weapons early if needed. So therefore, this alliance must work together to deter their use and be prepared to respond. And this deterrence and response includes planning and capabilities. Capabilities in the area of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, intelligence sharing, readiness through planning and exercises, both defensive and offensive strike capabilities, and overwhelming and focused, prepared responses to any North Korea nuclear threat or attack. The work in the planning that's going on in the extended deterrence arena is critical. It is increasing. Both of our presidents have, both the presidents for the Republic of Korea and the United States have promised and are executing increased planning and training and exercises in the area of extended deterrence to deter North Korea and be prepared for any sort of response. But this must continue into the future. The second element is in the area of space and cyber. I believe we are threatened in both of these domains. In space is critical to us. We count on being able to be in space, to be able to see, to communicate, and to be able to locate ourselves. In the cyber area, we focus on communications, and we must protect our networks because they also get information across between both countries, but also protect our infrastructure grids. The next war, any war in the future, will include both of these domains. North Korea is focusing on cyber, but space was also threatened. So we need to work together as an alliance to deter and strengthen our capability to include redundant means for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, communication, position, and protection of our networks. So the second area again is cyber and space. And the third area is trilateral cooperation between the Republic of Korea and the United States and Japan. This work has again started in South Korea with agreements between all three nations to work together to be able to strengthen our military capabilities. You know, Japan brings a great capability, and I truly do believe that any conflict on the Korean Peninsula is going to be regional and probably even global. It is critical for the Republic of Korea, the United States, and Japan to work together in areas of missile defense and intelligence. Japan also brings a very strong strike capability that would be greatly contribute to defending against any attack from North Korea. Also, United Nations Command has 5 bases in Japan that are essential to help with force flow and supplies. So continued and broad trilateral cooperation is critical in the future of Northeast Asian stability. And again, I am very encouraged by what this trilateral cooperation has started and is continuing to go. I mean, today there is a Republic of Korea, US, Japan, anti-submarine exercises that are going on in international waters. Defensive exercises working together to be able to deter North Korea submarine type of attacks or provocations, and clearly prepared to respond if those happens. This is very encouraging and very important and good for our future between the three countries for peace and security in Northeast Asia. And then the final area that I will mention is the area of information operations. I truly believe that it is critical that the Republic of Korea and the United States work together to get the truth about the majority of the free world into North Korea and do this at all levels. Truth in the area of freedom, about human rights, rule-based order, democracy, and basically just what the rest of the world understands about human rights and freedoms around the world that needs to go into North Korea, again, for people of all levels to understand this. You know, many people will say, even if we get that information, and it's not going to cause the North Korea people to rise up. They're too strongly controlled, they're too much indoctrinated. They will not rise up and change their government type in North Korea. And that may well be true. But I think also it is important to remember that getting this information in North Korea about the truth is also critically important if there's any sort of collapse in North Korea or any sort of conflict or scenario of war in North Korea. Today, the North Korea people at all the levels believe the United States and the Republic of Korea are evil. They want their land and property, and there will be no place in a reunified Korea for them. And that is especially true with those in power in North Korea. So we need, as governments, not just NGOs, to push to be able to get the truth in North Korea, the understanding of what freedom, human democracy is, but also very importantly, to understand that in a reunified peninsula, there is a place for North Korean people, and it will be a much better place than they are in right now. So in summary, I am very confident of the Republic of Korea-U.S. alliance. We have for many, many years been working together as an alliance to make it strong and capable. And I believe, I'm confident that that will continue into the future in the areas that I've discussed. So thank you very much. And I look forward to the discussion.
Well, thank you, General Sharp. There's a lot to unpack with those insightful comments. You talked about the conventional forces. We talked so much about their nuclear and missile capabilities, but right on the mark, the significant conventional capabilities that the North Koreans have, in addition to advanced weaponry. You also mentioned tactical nuclear weapons and the possibility that North Korea would deploy and use tactical nuclear weapons. Very, very significant. But then you also moved right into cyber and space. These are other areas that we have to focus on. And you ended on, but you obviously talked also about the alliances and the importance of the alliances. Indeed, that with the three countries, the United States and the Republic of Korea and Japan working together on all these issues, but the extended alliance with the allies and partners in the region and beyond. But you ended with information operations, getting information into North Korea so as to address the human rights issues and the freedoms that are being denied to the people in North Korea. A very powerful presentation. Thank you so much, General Sharp, for those very, very insightful comments. Dr. Mansurov, over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador, and good day, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And I'd like to thank the Washington Times for organizing that fantastic fact-finding mission which we had in Korea last month. Now, and again, General, excellent comments. I would have a couple of questions for you, but let me first make a couple of observations. On our trip to Korea, everybody we met, all our counterparts at different government ministries and agencies, they talked about that rising nuclear threat from North Korea, and they alluded to the imminent nuclear test. And by hindsight, in my opinion, again, we all want to forget about it because that appears to be a case of intelligence failure, if you wish, because while they were focused on the imminency of the nuclear test and they keep talking about it, what they missed was the passage of a new nuclear law or nuclear forces law, which was announced on September 8th. Essentially, it enunciated a new nuclear policy by the North Korean leadership. That new nuclear law explains basically the general role of the North Korean nuclear weapons in the defense strategy, lays out the conditions under which they would use nuclear weapons, and pretty much it's analogous to the U.S. nuclear policy review. And for our South Korean counterparts, just a few days before that announced, had no idea about what was coming. and not talk about it. That, by hindsight, again, that's a big surprise, and I think it was an intelligence failure on their part, because the new nuclear forces law essentially made a couple of, actually several major advances in institutionalizing the North Korean nuclear doctrine. The previous law was passed 9 years ago in 2013. And now this law not only says that, yes, the supreme leader is the ultimate decision maker on all the nuclear weapons matters, but he does it not only in his capacity as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, but also as the chairman of the State Affairs Commission. And now he's got the right to set up his own nuclear command, designating people who will be part of the Supreme Nuclear Command. But more importantly, essentially, that law, Article 3, stipulates that in case anything happens to the Supreme Commander, that if North Korea is decapitated, then the retaliation would be automatic. So that's the dead hand rule comes into play. Essentially, it says that North Korea can launch a preemptive nuclear strike if it detects an imminent attack of any kind on the North Korean leadership. And there is now no worry. It doesn't have to worry about designating any successor, any heir. Basically, the frontline commanders will know what to do according to the pre-approved operational plans by Kim Jong-un on the one hand. And on the other hand, this law elaborates on different conditions under which North Korea would use nuclear weapons. In the past, their strategy was basically aimed at deterring and repelling any aggression. But according to the new nuclear law, now it stipulates the possibilities of the first use for nuclear weapons and a lot of preemptive scenarios. When North Koreans now say that if their country's existential survival is in danger, they can use nuclear weapons. If they come under attack, either nuclear or conventional, by the aggressor state, they can preempt that attack with nuclear weapons. If their nuclear command and control infrastructure is under imminent attack, they can preempt with nuclear weapons. If we try to decapitate the leadership, they can do that. So this is a major, in my opinion, a major advancement in the North Korean institutionalization of their nuclear doctrine and nuclear posture review. And that kind of made me to think about, the consequences for the United States and South Korea. And this is the first question which I'd like to ask the general. Clearly, they're referring to South Korean kill chain strategy, which calls for preemptively striking North Korea's nuclear infrastructure and command and control system if an imminent attack is suspected. And so I wonder whether, these new plans, this new nuclear doctrine in North Korea, whether it should cause the United States to revise in any way its so-called decapitation plans for the North Korean leadership. Should we swear off the decapitation strike? And again, whether North Koreans will believe us or not, it's a separate matter. But in general, I mean, now that we know what the nuclear doctrine says, and if we take it at face value, and of course we may not, but if we do, should we adjust, revise, refine in any way our operational plans, emphasizing those preemptive decapitation strikes? And that would be my first question. And then the second question would relate to the latest round of short-range ballistic missile tests. I mean, many people kind of explain them as a North Korean reaction to our vice president's visit to South Korea. But in my opinion, as always, I mean, these tests, they're more than just about sending some message. I mean, they involved both technical kind of questions, you know, of course, some diplomatic messaging, some military considerations. But we know that the U.S. aircraft carrier group, led by Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier, deployed to Busan in the past few days. And clearly, when the North Koreans tested KN-29 or 23 Iskander-like short-range ballistic missile, which demonstrated the capability of flying, in this case, at 360 kilometers at a very high altitude with the final stage maneuver. And we know the possible range is much longer than that. I wonder whether what the really North Koreans are trying to signal here is their intention of basically threatening our aircraft carrier group, our strategic asset, which may be deployed in Korea in case of a contingency. And so my question to you is, and I don't know whether you're a technical expert or not, whether KN-23s, those short-range ballistic missiles, Iskander types, whether indeed they really can neutralize our aircraft carrier group, if that's the North Korean intent. Well, again, whether at port or you know, off the coast of North Korea. Do you think it's possible? And if it is, I mean, how worried are you about that capability?
Thank you.
So with those two questions, Ambassador, you know, I'll stop here, and then I'll continue when you give me another chance.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Masra. Please, over to you, General Sharp.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. First off, on the decapitation, I know of no decapitation plan that is explicitly, you know, designed and solely designed to kill Kim Jong-un. That does not exist. What does exist are a variety of plans that are that are today deterring North Korea from attacking. And if they do attack, are prepared to respond very quickly with overwhelming force to defend South Korea and to end the war on our terms. That includes all kinds of capabilities from all the different domains. To be able for you to say that, you know, that there is a specific plan to decapitate is just not accurate. There are plans, again, that overwhelming power go into North Korea if necessary in order to be able to bring a war that North Korea would have started to an end on both ours and the Republic of Korea terms. I think the other part, but what you're really getting at is what is the concern with the new law, which is concerning. There's no doubt about it. The new law, which seems to say that that if something happened to Kim Jong-un, or if something happened that they believe, North Korea believes that this war that they started was not going to end how they wanted to, that they would use tactical nuclear weapons, probably earlier than waiting for the very last minute to be able to do that. And I do think that is real. I think that there is a capability there, developing a capability for them to be able to use it. So we have to work very, very hard to prepare to deter that, to show that we have the capability to be able to very quickly kill those delivery systems and defend against those delivery systems. I will say it's going to be much harder with tactical nuclear weapons potentially deployed across the DMZ, you know, across much closer in a tactical sense to South Korea, but more importantly in many different locations, very easy to hide. that will make it more difficult. That is why we continue to say we have to have good intelligence, good surveillance to be able to do that. It's also more difficult because of the maneuvering capability that they have developed over the last couple of years. The fact that they've gone to solid fuel rather than having to refuel these systems that we could watch pretty easily as they do the refueling. So it gives that protection time, that response time, not just response, but our ability to be able to attack before they attack with these weapons. It is more difficult. And I do believe that what we in South Korea are doing, the types of assets we're deploying, the types of intelligence we're deploying, the type that North Korea or South Korea is buying are critical to that. So I don't want to minimize this threat at all, because I think it is an extensive threat, and it's not just potentially if Kim Jong-un is killed. I think there's a lot of other circumstances that we got to be prepared to deter and ready to respond to it. On your aircraft carrier, again, I'm not a ballistic, KN-23 expert by any sense, but I do know, and I'm very confident in the defensive capabilities of our carrier strike group, and because they work very hard to make sure that they have those defensive capabilities in place to defend the carrier and really all of our assets at sea, whether that's a carrier, whether the destroyers that are out there or submarines that are out there. The defense of those is critical. So positioning is very important, but also to having the right radars, to have the right systems to be able to attack anything that's attacking them from the air or from missiles is critical. So I'm pretty confident that because of the capabilities that we have, that if you look at some of the Chinese capabilities that they have, those are extremely advanced, and we have worked very hard to make sure we're prepared for that. And I think North Korea has learned from China on some of those capabilities, but and again, I'm confident that working together, that we've got the capability to properly position those assets so that not only can they be and will they be used in any type of conflict, but they will be able to be defended so that they can continue to be used. But again, to your point, the advancements that North Korea has made in the areas that you talked about are critical, and we must be prepared, and South Korea must be prepared to counter those.
Let me ask you a question of clarification, Ambassador, with your permission. If I heard you correctly, you seem to be saying that we don't have any preemptive strike plans, and yet if one reads South Korean press, there is a lot of talk about the so-called kill chain strategy, which again, according to open sources, allegedly calls for preemptively striking North Korea's nuclear infrastructure and command systems if an imminent attack from the north is suspected. So my question of clarification is that just cheap talk and there is no such a thing as kill chain strategy? Or are the South Koreans doing something outside the framework of the US ROK alliance, which I find hard to imagine, but you're not aware of what they're doing? So please help me better understand what's going on. Is that North Korean fear of the kill chain strategy and our own preemptive strike, is it misplaced, ungrounded? What's going on here?
So let me be clear. You said decapitation. You said a strike that is explicitly targeted at Kim Jong-un.
Yes, nuclear command and control. So he's the nuclear supreme commander who will press that button. He's
not the only piece of that. Yes, there is a very, very strong and prepared ability to, if we see or South Korea sees a potential, a strong likelihood that there is about to be an attack. And this could be nuclear or non-nuclear. We really believe that they are about to launch through our intelligence capabilities. South Korea and the United States has the capability, has the plans, has exercised to try to launch and to be able to stop that attack before it starts. that obviously focuses, and in many places, if you're talking down, you're now talking very short timelines. You're talking about the ability to be able to get in and destroy missiles before they are launched, to destroy command and control systems that have to order that launch and guide those launches coming in. Those plans are in place. But a plan that just says, okay, I think they're about to launch now. We know Kim Jong-un is in this building. Let's knock that building out explicitly. For the purpose of killing Kim Jong-un, that plan is not in place.
So thank you, General Sharp. No, I
It gets
think
much more at defeating an imminent threat that is about to happen.
Thank you.
Dr. Mansurov, I think General Sharp really hit it when you talk about an imminent threat and good intelligence and responding in kind. But let me go on to Dr. Mansurov's overarching question, which I think you answered very well, General Sharp. Indeed, now that we're looking at North Korea's nuclear doctrine, and they've publicized it, it's been memorialized, and it's been disseminated worldwide, of the preemptive use of nuclear weapons. If there's even a perceived threat to the command and control, to the leadership, and so this is a significant development. There's no question, and both you gentlemen have spoken about the very significant uptick in intention because of this new nuclear doctrine. So yeah, that is important. But let me also mention, we talk about tactical nuclear weapons. I'm one who does not, I don't differentiate too much between tactical and strategic nuclear weapons. These are nuclear weapons. And when I hear about the use and certainly the deployment and the potential use of nuclear weapons, my God, that is opening Pandora's box. That is moving us into an era that could be horrific for all. So, and I think a lot of this, I mean, we most recently we heard from President Putin about using all available means, and he's put the nuclear issue on the table in Ukraine, and now talking about the 4 regions in the east and south that have been annexed to the Russian Federation. So I think now that the use and the terminology we're using, but also being very clear from the Russian Federation, but certainly from North Korea now, saying we could deploy and use nuclear weapons if necessary, if there is even a perceived threat. So my question to you, General Sharp, and to you, Dr. Mansurov, I think we're moving into really uncharted waters here. And the general is absolutely right. We would need very, very fine intelligence for us and our allies in the Republic of Korea to do something of a preemptive nature. But you got to wonder about the intelligence capabilities of North Korea. Do they have that unique insight so that they know something is imminent, or they just perceive something could be imminent and open up with a volley using even tactical nuclear weapons? My God, and the response would be horrific, obviously, because there has to be a response to that. So we've talked about, and Dr. Mansurov mentioned the imminent 7th nuclear test. It's been imminent for months, right? But it looks like North Korea will be moving towards a 7th nuclear. Hopefully they do not. But if they do have a 7th nuclear test, or an intercontinental ballistic missile, a Hwasong 15, 16, 17 launched, and so forth, how do we respond? What would the consequences be? What actions would we take? Given especially that the UN Security Council now has the Russian Federation and China, as we saw most recently, where they vetoed, if you will, a resolution to sanction North Korea. Would they be supportive? Are we in sync on making it clear that we don't want to move into these uncharted waters, and North Korea should cease and desist with ICBM launches and nuclear tests? What's your sense, General Sharp, and you, Dr. Mansurov? How are we going to manage this, indeed, if North Korea continues to escalate tension?
So let me talk a little bit about, get down to the tactical level just for a second, then I'll go back up to the level you're talking about as far as how we do how do we deter this as we move into the future and be prepared for it. First off, I think it is critical as we talk about these tactical nuclear weapons that there is a clear understanding of the capability and the destructive power of nuclear weapons of all different sizes, depending upon, both the size and where they're launched towards and all of that. I think what North Korea sees as an advantage of having, I'll call them smaller nuclear weapons. And there is a difference between smaller nuclear weapons that have limited area destructive capability and much larger ones that are focused in the middle of Seoul, for example. So there is, I believe, North Korea thinks, as I think probably Russia thinks also, the potential use of weapons of a smaller yield nuclear weapon in some area that is not a very large population area could be enough for them to say, okay, we just launched this, look what we did in this area. We're prepared to do the much larger ones very quickly if you don't back down and give up right now. So how do you deter that type of use of a tactical nuclear weapon? How do you respond to it? Is exactly what I think we need to be working our way through, both from an intelligence capability, but also from a strike capability there. This is a very, very dangerous scenario because escalation goes through the roof very high and very, very quickly, I think, in scenarios like this. And that's, why I said earlier that the expanded discussion within extended deterrence is critical. And to be able to get down to some of these real world scenarios, I think is critical to be able to be prepared to hopefully deter, but clearly are prepared to respond to anything along those lines. So, the ability to be able to do that, it's much easier to say than actually put things in place, because you've got several players involved that do not have perfect intelligence on what the other side is thinking. And again, that makes escalation very, very dangerous and very quick. So no good answers there. I am absolutely convinced it is a real threat that we've got to work our way through, and a capability that North Korea is growing towards having. North Korea has done 6 nuclear tests, as you've said. They've launched a bunch of missiles of all different types and everything. They still have not launched or tested, and hopefully they never will, a missile with a nuclear weapon on it and tested that. So it's developing, it is real. I think they do have a ways to go. I think that's one of the reasons they're testing so much right now. It's not just to make a statement, it is to truly get extended or get, expanded capabilities. And some of the tests have failed, but they've continued to test. And so yes, it makes statements, and timing of it makes the statements also, but the capability, the technology also continues to increase. And I think Kim Jong-un and leadership understand that they've got to continue to test to improve to be able to get these real capabilities. So again, no solid answer other than to say it really is a threat that I do think we've got to figure out how do we work our way through this possibility of this threat that's out there.
Thank you, General Sharp. Dr. Mansurov.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. 2 observations in response to your question, and then the question of my own for the general. Number one, I would keep Russia and North Korea separate in all the nuclear discussions. Whatever President Putin is saying about the use of all weapons in Russia's disposal to win that confrontation, he is not talking about the use of tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. The Russians conceived this conflict as a total hybrid warfare against the US-led NATO, with Ukraine being just the tip of the spear. And so all the messages are actually aimed at the United States. They're about strategic nuclear weapons use. They're aimed at restoring the mutually assured destruction concept and its effectiveness, basically creating an atmosphere of fear so that, again, Washington, Brussels, London begin to fear Moscow's potential. So all the nuclear use talk, it's about Washington, it's about London, it's about Berlin. It's not about Ukraine. I mean, we can deceive ourselves speculating that Russians may, detonate a tactical nuclear device in Ukraine, but that's not. I mean, they didn't build the nuclear weapons to use them in Ukraine. They built them to use against NATO. They're going to populate those areas, live in those areas. So again, it's self-deceiving on our part to say that, it's not about us, it's about Ukraine. It is about the United States, again, Great Britain, and some other great powers, in my opinion. I may be wrong, but again, in my opinion, that's the message he's trying to send. That's number one. Number two, what can we do if the North Koreans tested for the 7th time the nuclear device? Unfortunately, in my judgment, there is not much we can do because the UN Security Council is unlikely to pass any more anti-North Korean resolutions due to the Russian and Chinese positions there and the veto yielding, again, capability. Now we're in a very different state of relations with both countries. So I don't expect any more cooperation from Moscow and Beijing on this issue. Plus, the credibility of our own policymakers, unfortunately, is being increasingly questioned. I mean, when you have the vice president, in her remarks calling North Korea an ally of the United States, by mistake, of course, but nevertheless, those who watch closely, they notice that gaffe, when you have South Korean president, making some hot mic remarks, which came back to haunt him in Seoul, and we know the South Korean National Assembly just passed a vote of non-confidence towards Foreign Minister Park Chin. I mean, a very fine gentleman, highly respected and great statesman. We met with him last August, and yet, the South Korean National Assembly, controlled by the opposition, obviously, but expressed its non-confidence in, his ability to lead the South Korean diplomacy. So again, domestically, I think the Yoon administration is not in a great political position to do much. And by the way, that audacious plan, which we heard so much about when we were in Seoul, as you know, it basically was dead on arrival. The North Koreans dismissed it, and we no longer talk about it. That South Korean Yoon's administration's approach to dealing with North Korea. So the credibility is not there, in my opinion, to do much in response to the North Korean nuclear test. Now, what I'm worried about is something, it's a lesson learned from Ukraine. Just a few days ago, 3 out of 4 gas pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and 2, were blown up by somebody. Again, accusations fly back and forth. But that's a major new development in that total hybrid warfare, and specifically that pipeline warfare. We know Japan and South Korea, they're linked with so many pipelines, with so many fiber optic cable lines. And my question to the general is the US ROK Alliance ready to deal with the threat of pipeline warfare across the Sea of Japan, the East Sea of Korea? If whoever decides that these are now the legitimate targets, all the gas and oil pipelines underneath the sea, all the fiber optic cables connecting, these two countries, are we ready?
General, over to you, General. General Sharp?
Oh, the,
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. First off, a lot to unpack there. On the Russian nuclear threat against Ukraine,
against the United States, not Ukraine,
well,
in my opinion.
a lot of people said Russia would never attack Ukraine. Many, over almost a year ago now, and that's clearly
Okay.
not true. But let's get into the response of the nuclear test and where that could go. I would agree with you that it is very unlikely that increased sanctions or more sanctions will be agreed to by the UN Security Council. I would actually, and maybe it's just hope, but maybe it's more than that China may not be one of those veto folks. China does not want North Korea to continue to cause these problems. Not positive about that, but I think China would be potentially more willing to do more things sanction-wise if a nuclear test took place. I would agree with you, though, that Russia would probably veto that. So the result would be that there would not be increased UN sanctions out of that. That doesn't mean there can't be additional sanctions, other sanctions from other places, other countries around the world. But the other part of it is, I think, and this continues every time new types of capabilities are shown in North Korea, is a real strong look both in South Korea and in the United States, and also to agree in Japan as to what capabilities need to be there to be able to deter further development and potential use of nuclear weapons. So our increased exercises that we've been doing, our increased deployment of carriers, of other strategic assets to be prepared to respond. And I think a nuclear test along those lines would increase those types of capabilities even more into the future. So there may not be ways to directly sanction and directly be able to stop that, but I think that every nuclear test, every missile launch shows both us and South Korea that we need to continue to strengthen our capability to see, to deter, and to respond there. And I think that's real. And I think we've demonstrated it, especially recently, as you look at what we're doing now in the exercise area. There's talks about South Korea buying a THAAD system and additional capabilities to be prepared to deter and to respond. So it's not like North Korea gets away with these types of things for free, because it does mean that there is increased capabilities deployed not only to the region, but but here in the United States that are prepared to very quickly respond if absolutely necessary.
So General Sharp and Dr. Monsadov, I'm going to have.
What about pipeline warfare?
No,
Right.
One second, Dr.
just,
Monsadov. Okay, very quickly, General Sharp, because we're running out of time. Please, very quickly on this one.
So we are very aware of the fiber optics and the capabilities that are so critical to our alliance and to the United States around the world. And I'll just leave it at, we work very hard to protect that and to make sure that we have redundant systems out there.
Thank you, General Sharp. Thank you for the excellent responses. And Dr. Monsadov, thank you for your excellent questions. You did mention, General Sharp, the deployment of THAAD, missile defense systems. And I think this is pretty clear now that the debate in the Republic of Korea, why the UN administration would be very supportive of the actual operational use of THAAD and other missile defense capabilities, given the threat coming from the north. And now with the new nuclear doctrine of the possibility of preemptive use, makes it even more important to fortify one's missile defense capabilities. Let me just say this. We opened up talking about our fact-finding mission in August to the Republic of Korea. And I think, General, your comments right on, you discussed this with the senior leaders in the Republic of Korea. Dr. Monsadov, you and I also did. These were excellent meetings we had. And yes, indeed, the audacious plan to reach out to North Korea was announced when we were there. And although Kim Jong-un and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, they've said they're not interested in it, there's a lot to unpack in that audacious proposal to the North. And I think this conversation we're having today is indicative of the fact that we really do need to sit down with the North Koreans to move away from extreme tension that we have and the possibility of greater escalation, and then the possibility of stumbling into something of an accidental night, whether it's accidental conflict that could even possibly include the use of nuclear weapons. It makes the imperative of negotiations very clear, front and center. Indeed, we have to contain, we have to deter, and the general spoke about reinforcing, enhancing deterrence, and that's so necessary. But also necessary is inter-Korean dialogue, talking between the North and South, the visits of separated families, visits to Mount Kumgang, possibly reconstituting the Kaesung industrial complex. The same thing with the negotiations with the United States and the DPRK, possibly certainly to include the ROK, maybe reconstituting the sixth party, who knows? But let's get into a dialogue. And this is where China, and General, you mentioned China in your closing remarks. China has, and Russia does also, but certainly China has, I think, significant influence on North Korea. If the North Koreans can listen, and if the Chinese can encourage them to come back to negotiations, so we can defuse some of this extreme tension that we're experiencing and we're witnessing right now. So I want to thank General Sharp. I want to thank Dr. Monsadov, and indeed, I want to thank our host here, Dr. Michael Jenkins, and the Washington Times Foundation for permitting us to come on like this and to have this very rich discussion of issues that really impact in a significant way the national security interest of not only our allies in the Republic of Korea and Japan and our partners around the world, and indeed the United States, but all countries. So thank you for hosting these events, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Ambassador Detrani, and especially Dr. Mantroff. Your commentary is always enlightening and challenging, and we thank you for that. General Walter Sharp, it was an honor to be with you in the fact-finding discussions with the different ministries in Korea, and we learned so much. And Ambassador, once again, your insight, we must have dialogue. We must go forward. We're prepared to help the Biden administration in any way we can. And we believe those efforts are not in vain. Eventually the door will open again. And we've got to come to terms on building a new communication. And the Washington Times, I want to thank the Times and Chris Dolan, president of the Times. They're covering this program. And we'll see the articles not only in Washington, but also in Seoul, because Korean Herald and others, and Korean Times always picks it up. And we're happy to communicate our appreciation for the cooperation we got from the embassy and from the leaders in Korea. We have hope that President Yoon will go forward as we support that effort with the alliance with the United States. I want to thank also the UPF for being a host of this and a sponsor for this program. And we'll be here every Tuesday, the first Tuesday, not every Tuesday, every first Tuesday of the month. We're always here with the Washington Brief. You can find all of our past programs at washingtonbrief.org. Very easily, just put in your browser, washingtonbrief.org, and all of our past programs are there. We've had General Sharp before, and great people of knowledge and expertise on this most important thing and most important issue at our time. And the nuclear weapons discussions is of great concern. So Ambassador Detrani, you have been right at the forefront of that, and we hope that we can support your great work even further. And I want to thank all of our audience. We hope you have a great week. Thank you.
And thank you, Michael, and to Ambassador, the South Korean ambassador to Washington, the United States, Ambassador Cho Tae-young, was so helpful in getting us to meet with senior officials during our fact-finding mission. So that special thanks to Ambassador Cho. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.